Happy Father's Day! My mom and I are gonna get a cake for her dad, my grandpa. Today, I wanted to talk about a few fictional dads, my dad, and the relationship between. My dad is dead, so this one will be sad. My dad's dad died when my dad was 8 years old. This grandfather I never met died of complications related to type 1 diabetes. That's the hereditary one. My dad had it too, and I'm lucky not to have it. My dad had heart problems as well. He had a heart attack just a few months before I was born. He died when I was 24. I got 3 times longer with him than he got with his dad. My dad raised me knowing that he would probably die when I was relatively young. He told me he was worried I might feel like I didn't have a dad at all. He didn't have a dad, so how could he possibly be a dad? So, Terminator 2, huh? My dad loved this movie. Not only because it's a friggin' rad movie, but because he related to the main kid character, John Connor. In the first movie, John's dad turns out to be a time traveler from the dystopian future who died soon after impregnating Sarah Connor. In T2, John finds a father figure in Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Terminator never had a father, and wasn't programmed to be a father, so John has to teach him some of the smaller details.
You gotta listen to the way people talk. You don't say affirmative or some shit like that. You say, no problemo. And if someone comes up to you with an attitude, you say, eat me. And if you want to shine them on, it's hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la vista, baby.
But then, at the end of the movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger has to sink in lava to preserve the timeline. I wonder if my dad ever related to Arnie more than John. Maybe he felt like a robot pretending to be a father even though he couldn't stay forever. And I'm John from his point of view. A single person can only experience reality from a single perspective, but a story picks you up and shows you a fictional reality from a new perspective for every fictional character. My dad didn't have a dad, but neither did John, and John had a father figure. My dad wasn't sure how to be a dad, but Arnie wasn't built for it either, and Arnie became a father figure. My father's death was an event we had practiced together on the couch watching TV. So, Star Wars, huh? My dad loved the original trilogy not only because it's a friggin' rad trilogy, but because he related to the main character, Luke Skywalker. Luke has an aunt and uncle instead of a mother and father, and then his aunt and uncle are killed. But then he gets another father figure, and another father figure. And, well, what do you know, he's got a father after all.
No, I am your father.
Obi-Wan dies in front of him. Yoda dies in front of him. And Darth Vader dies in front of him. I swear, I remember my dad crying at this scene in particular. Was he thinking from the perspective of Luke, a son watching his dad die? Or was he thinking from the perspective of Darth Vader, a father dying in front of his son? My dad had some reasons to relate to Darth Vader. Vader had lots of mechanical parts. My father had an insulin pump and a pacemaker. For the last years of his life, my father was on dialysis equipment. His kidneys didn't work quite right anymore. He used dialysis every night. When we went traveling, we used to sleep in the same hotel room together, but he and Mom put me in another room because he didn't want me kept awake by the dialysis noise. My dad and I had great times together, but he also wanted to keep his distance from me at times. He wanted to leave me with a healthy, active version of himself by separating the two of us when he wasn't well. My dad tended to cry sometimes, especially at movies involving fathers and sons. Kubo and the Two Strings. I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping, while my guitar gently weeps. Over the end credits, yeah, Dad cried. He also cried at the end of Star Wars 8, with the little boy holding a broom like a lightsaber. But I think the time I saw him cry most was after an episode of Bleach. For the last few months, I'd been sharing my favorite childhood anime with my parents. We had fun trying out Ruru Hakusho and Inuyasha. Sometimes these anime are great fun. Sometimes they're not very good, and that's great fun too.
Hand over the jewel! The jewel or your life!
But Bleach was all about death, more so than I remembered. In episode 9, Ichigo, the death god here, fights a hollow, a sort of supernatural undead monster, which is able to show him his late mother. It saved her last thoughts.
Mom? Is that you?
That lure we see isn't actually his mother, but she's transmitting her thoughts to him.
That can only mean that the lure recorded her thoughts at the very moment she was killed.
Her dying thoughts were recorded.
Ichigo, thank you for loving me.
Mother.
My dad remarked that after a tsunami in Japan, there was a public phone booth set up, which wasn't attached to anything. It was for survivors to talk to those who had died. He cried and said it was just so sad. As he dried his tears, he said that he hadn't stopped thinking about his dad for 50 years. A few months later, my dad had another heart attack. Before surgery for it, we shared our last words. We'd had lots of practice with our last words. We had lots of chances to try them out. He said that he loved me, and he was proud of me, and I was an unexpected delight. I sang him a little part of a song. See, my dad was a folk singer. He played the guitar and fiddle and banjo for a genre like country, but older, more cowboy style. So I sang a bit from a Scottish folk band, Silly Wizard. He said he'd played with their guitarist once. The song is called The Lament of the Fisherman's Wife, and it's about the aftermath of a shipwreck. I sang just a few lines about a school for kids whose dads died at sea, where the kids are taught to die at sea as well. There's a school on the hill where the sons of dead sailors are led towards tempests and gales, where their God-given wings are clipped close to their bodies, and their eyes are bound round with ship's sails. I changed a line of that song, by the way. The real line is sons of dead fathers, but I couldn't sing that in front of my dad. I told him I sang that song because I don't feel like one of those kids bound by ship's sails. I had two wonderful parents, and I always would. My dad knew the school on the hill, but he raised me to keep my wings. I'm a squid with wings. Okay, so anyway, I get a lot of myself from my dad. My joy in computer programming, my occasional smartass attitude, my ability to apologize when my smartass attitude goes too far. My long distance running too, I started that with my dad. He went on a business trip to Australia once. I think my studies abroad were inspired by that. There's really no end to what my dad got me thinking about. That's why thinking is all I do here at Thinkster. If I had to pick a fictional dad to compare to my dad, it wouldn't be the Terminator or Darth Vader. Maybe the Iron Giant, but I'd really compare him to Ichigo's dad, actually. There's an episode where it turns out Ichigo's dad is a death god just like Ichigo. He was hiding it. A hollow monster, who is also a death god, mocks him. The monster has a way bigger sword, which means he's obviously way more powerful.
You're a fool, because you know you can't win against my sword. A Zanpakuto size equals the amount of one spirit energy! It is obvious that little weapon hanging limply by your side could never defeat my Zanpakuto! Moron!
But Ichigo's dad beats him in one swing. He says, if you're powerful enough, you can keep your sword nice and small. If he wasn't so humble, his sword would be bigger than any monster he'd ever met.
Let me give you a little lesson on the basics. Once a Soul Reaper reaches the level of Captain, he then has the ability to control the size of his Zanpakuto. They have to, because if they didn't, they'd all be swinging around swords the size of skyscrapers. Kinda like you. Remember this. You should never judge your opponent by the size of his Zanpakuto.
Happy Father's Day, Dad. Happy Father's Day, Grandpa. You've got big swords, which you keep nice and small. Bye-bye. By the way, I've got a Patreon at patreon.com/Thinkster. I want to thank all these squidlings and elder squids. Thanks.